Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 11th meeting of the Regional Parks and Trails Committee. My name is Jake Martins. I'm the General Manager of Corporate Services and the Corporate Officer for the Regional District. I'm pleased to call this meeting to order for the purposes of conducting the election for the Chair and Vice Chair positions for 2025. I'll first just recognize that we're meeting today on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. The election of the chair and vice chair positions is guided by the CVRD procedure bylaw, which provides for a nomination process and a secret ballot vote, provided there are more than one candidate nominated. I want to recognize that we have all the directors with us here today in the room, and Director Mayer joining us via Zoom online. So before getting to the call for nominations, I just wanted to invite any questions concerning the process, if there is any. Been through this as our last committee of the board that we are proceeding with, so I think everyone's been through it a fair number of times now. So seeing no questions, I will begin with the chair position and call for nominations for the position of chair first time. And Director Cole Hamilton.
Thanks very much, Jake. I'd like to nominate Director Brown.
Thank you very much. I will call a second time for any nominations for the position of chair. And I will call a third and final time for any position or nominations for the position of chair. Seeing no further nominations, Director Brown, do you allow your name to stand?
I do, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to announce you acclaimed as chair for the Regional Parks and Trails Committee for 2025. We'll now move to the vice chair position, and I will call a first time for nominations for the position of vice chair and Director McCollum.
I'd like to nominate Director Mayer.
Thank you very much. I will call a second time for any nominations for the position of vice chair. And I will call a third time for any nominations for the position of vice chair. Seeing no further nominations, Director Mayer, do you allow your name to stand? Give me the nod. I think that's an affirmative. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So with that, I'm pleased to announce you as vice chair for 2025. With that, thank you very much for your participation and cooperation, directors. I'll now turn matters over to Chair Brown to preside over the remainder of the meeting.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you for the support for the chair position. I appreciate it. And looking forward to working with Jen as well, Director Millier. So we have first on the agenda, having recognized the traditional territory, is public input on the 2025-2029 financial plan. Do we have any actual input to report?
Well, thank you, Chair. And I'll actually ask Lucy Witchart to speak to this, the public input on this financial planning process. I will also want to just reiterate what we spoke about a week ago and the economic uncertainty that that we're currently facing, given the threat of tariffs and the U.S.-Canada economic relations we're currently in. What the CVRD is doing with respect to that situation, we are taking a look at all of our suppliers lists. We're taking a look at all of our costs and expenses for various projects. as well as our capital projects, those that are both currently underway and others that are in proposed stage, and trying to understand what those financial impacts could be, looking for opportunities to reduce any kind of financial pressures or pinch points. Where we need to, we will come to the Regional Parks and Trails Committee if there is recommendations or direction that we're looking at the committee to provide. And as well, if there's the opportunity through the financial planning process, which does require budget to be adopted by the end of March, also looking at opportunities to respect those fiscal conditions that we see. With that, Lucy has, I think, a brief comment around the public input to the financial plan, and then we'll get into the budget itself.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lucy.
Oops.
Thanks through the CAO and chair to the directors to give you a brief update on where we are with public engagement into budget. The public is encouraged to use our Engage page, and to date we have 4 submissions of questions out there, so not too bad. And we have no items of feedback. The questions are not directly related to the service that's here. That's under the discretion of this board. However, there are a couple that are related to recreation and the 3 other questions there. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Do you want to just go straight into the presentation?
Sure. Very good. Just have a few brief comments. Most of you have heard these introductory comments, but for the benefit of directors that don't sit on our CVRD board or others, just a few comments before we get going into the presentations. Just to give you some contents, we have up on the screen here our roadmap for our budget, and our process began with delivering of a proposed budget on January 28th to the CVRD board. We also did post our full budget package, as we call it, in line with the changes that we made last year. It's all posted out to our website, and this is for the benefit of our public and also our elected officials. And what we held out there was a high-level summary that's in your PowerPoint, and that PowerPoint is probably about in most cases 96% of what you're seeing here today, where we have a little bit of an error we may found or adjustment, then we're correcting that before we present to you, but all the information is there in the PowerPoint for your review. The detailed budget reports are out there, and in some cases we have supplementary information for a particular service, and that is out there this year too. And that was an improvement we made this go round, was to get that out there early for directors as well. As we continue down our road here, that we have dedicated meetings, worked well last year, continuing with that this year. The first one was on February 3rd with the CVRD board, and then we've moved forward with BCOB and did day 1 of EASC committee lots there, of course, as we know. And but we had a great day yesterday going through probably more than half. That brings us to today, and this is where all the other services for which the CVRD board has delegated budget authority to committees or commissions. And here with Regional Parks and Trails Committee, we have your one service, 625. And Mark's going to give an overview of that service. And before that, Doug will just say a few words about the core service, overall, just for a little bit of context, and if there's any other questions that any of the directors may have. And just to come back to the roadmap, and as we finalize our budget, the recommended budget will come forward to the board on March 11th. If this committee needs any extra time over and above today, there's February 25th to deal with that, to roll everything up on March 11th, and bylaws will be adopted on the 18th. So I'll leave it at that, and if there's any questions, happy to address those.
Thanks so much. And the public input is available up until right till March, or?
Yeah. We actually put out there and we asked the public to provide their comments before February 28th.
Oh,
We left the site up. I'm sure we will again, we just put that date out there so that we can make sure that we roll that together to provide to the table before that recommended budget comes.
Okay, great. Get your thoughts in now, people.
Mhm.
Okay. Who's taking over now? Doug
Thanks,
Hammond?
yeah, Doug
Okay.
DeMarzo is our General Manager of Community Services, and Doug will just provide a really brief overview of the regional sustainability as a core service. Board members are familiar with this, but for those who haven't participated in last week's board meeting, this is just a quick overview on regional sustainability as a core service, and then we'll get into the Service 625 budget. So Doug, over to you.
Thank you. And through the chair, this really looks at the CBRD core service. A lot of it comes from our planning department and how they interrelate with many of the objectives our board has given them over the last years. Founded in both our GS and other regional type of services that we provide for you. So some of those services include the ones you see listed here. And overall, the regional sustainability in the past has really looked at focusing on data collection, monitoring, and reporting, and those supporting those collaborative action items that you move forward. In this case, we're focusing on the regional parks component, both the strategic and coordinated land acquisition and the management of that service, as this is recently a new service introduced a couple of years ago. Some of the key service outcomes include local government for rural areas and responding to and partnering with community groups and residents. So just draw attention to this last one, as the regional parks intention is really to focus on these community groups and those partnerships moving forward. Some of the key initiatives from this service include the minor amendments through the regional growth strategy. Again, development of the regional strategic parks plan, which is completed, and your response and development to the housing crisis, which has multiple initiatives underneath of it. And of course, the poverty reduction strategy as well. As you can sort of see here, there's a number of milestones. I won't go through them all, but in your agenda package, it focuses on those key initiatives and where they are from a timeline perspective. And again, some more as well. Here you see the regional park strategy, and really we're moving towards the development of a land acquisition strategy in the coming year as the next step in implementing the regional park service. Of course, overlapping many of the services, we look at our corporate energy and emissions plan. This has been essential in meeting your GHG emission targets. Plays a large portion of this plays into the recreation facilities and other CBRD owned facilities. And as this grows and continues to grow, they'll be looking at natural assets and how that might interrelate to the regional parks in the future. There's many lenses that you can look at under the corporate energy and emissions plan. Really, some of the key challenges here, to work collaboratively with member municipalities on environmental, social, and community and local impact. Economic development matters, so it's quite a broad range under that regional sustainability lens. And I'd be remiss to note that our other GM, Alana, has a lot of these portfolios within her portfolio. Again, look at some of the expenses. I won't go into too great a detail here in the interest of time. Some of your revenues, mostly taxation. There's not a lot of recovery from any other services here. And we spoke to a lot of this throughout my presentation. Just wanted to understand that reconciliation framework to engagement and development of key initiatives remains important in our Indigenous relations as we move through all of our core services, especially the regional sustainability lens. That'll leave you open to any questions.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions? Director Hardy. Go ahead, Director.
Thanks, Chair. My condolences to being the chair for the Regional Park Services. Congratulations. You're just going through some of the expenses here and just looking at the bump in this particular service, and maybe I haven't done my math correctly, and I'll lean towards staff, most notably Lucy, with regards to, I think there's a bump of about 33% in this service this year. And then just looking at some of our expenses, advertising, there's an increase of $13,000, maps and printing, $4,000, and capital works reserves of 137, jumping up to $250,000. And again, when we start looking at, you know, our focus of trying to recognize the fact that we're getting into an economic crunch here, local government, provincial government, federal government, and ourselves within our own households. I'm just kind of wondering why we see such a big jump this year of 33%. And like I said, maybe my math's wrong, but it seems like an awful lot of money to go towards wants versus needs, in my opinion. Thanks.
So thank you, Director Hardy. I think you're maybe a little bit ahead of our presentation schedule here. So Mark will provide a presentation to bring everybody up to speed, and then we can work to focus on your specific asks at that stage. That's fine, or we could answer them now. It's at your discretion. Okay.
He's very keen. Go ahead, Mark.
So yeah, I think Mark will now introduce the proposed financial plan for Service 625. That is the Regional Parks and Trails Service. And then to Director Hardy's questions, I think some of the answers might come through Mark's presentation, but certainly we can cycle back to them when through the presentation or afterwards. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you, James. Through the chair to the directors, I'm here to present the financial plan, the 2025-2029 financial plan for the Regional Parks and Trails Service, Service 625. The purpose of this service is to protect and to preserve regionally significant natural areas while providing opportunities for public access, as well as support the development of a network of regional greenways and trails. All area residents, regional residents are participants in the service. So that's all the residents in each of the municipalities, as well as the electoral areas. And it does include the residents on Denman Island and Hornby Island as well. The service, it is, I think, important to state that this is a distinct service from the other community park services that already exist within the municipalities and in the electoral areas and on the islands. It's meant to complement those other community park services. In terms of accomplishments for 2024, the huge accomplishment was the final adoption of the Regional Parks and Trails Strategic Plan, which really is that guiding document for developing and managing the service for the next 20 years. So it establishes a vision, it establishes goals and objectives, as well as outlines 64 actions for the service to accomplish in the short, the medium, as well as the long term. In terms of trends and challenges and opportunities, the big challenge now with the service is we have this land acquisition, or we have the strategic plan, but now we need a land acquisition strategy. So that's the next piece that we need to determine our acquisition priorities, which will eventually impact service management. There will be some challenges in regards to private lands. Where we live, our region is largely private land based. So any acquisitions that we make in the future likely involve private land negotiations, which can be complicated and can also be costly. In terms of opportunities, we do have an opportunity with this service to protect significant natural areas, which can have a range of community benefits, including physical and mental health benefits, but also biodiversity, social and community benefits as well. So these are the places that can really help define the region in which we live. There's also opportunities to build relationships with our Comox First Nation partners and with our community groups, largely conservation and outdoor recreation groups. But I think that there's a huge opportunity here to help with our reconciliation efforts with Comox First Nation. There's also opportunities to support other regional planning efforts, mostly those that are tied to climate action, watershed protection, and those kind of things. In terms of our priority for the work plan, So we want to begin implementing the actions within the strategic plan. And the first big action is the development of a land acquisition strategy, which would really go ahead and support all those goals that are listed and identified within the strategic plan. In terms of FTE for our human resources, we have an opening balance of 1.39. We are suggesting or proposing adjustments to reduce that by 0.4, and that's because of the refined work that's needed on the land acquisition strategy, giving us a ending balance of just under 1 FTE. In the future, we're looking at 2027 to 2029. It's all dependent, but as we start to bring on any lands or any trails to fall under this service, then we will need to start to bring on a parks technician to manage that operational side. So that's that future 1 FTE you see in the 2027-2029 column. In terms of expenses, we've got increases to our support services of about 4,600. Personnel costs based on those reductions to FTE have gone down from last year by 38,000. Materials and supplies have gone down by 16,000 from last year, and that's largely because we produced the strategic plan. Our contract and general services has also gone down based on from last year of about 33,000. And then we've got a jump in the transfer to reserves, and this might talk to or speak to Director Hardy's question there. That goes up by 143,000, and that's largely to look at starting to build up our reserves in anticipation of our future acquisitions. So again, in terms of our revenue, our taxation, that would go up that 144,000, which basically is the same as that increase in the expenses. And again, that is to start to build up our reserves. So in terms of funding sources, hard to read here, but we basically have an increase in the proposed. And then as we kind of move forward, it's kind of smaller increases, but I think it's really important to know that at this stage, before we have a land acquisition strategy, we're not really sure on the costs to implement and manage this service. So those costs are a little bit unknown in the future until we get a land acquisition strategy in place. In terms of our operating budget, again, as I just reiterated, it's hard for us to project without the land acquisition strategy at this time. But I think the key point of this slide is to see the transfer to reserves. So large bump up there into 2026, and we're kind of looking at those high 300,000s to start to really put our reserves in a good position for future acquisition. Our current balances in our reserves, we've got 25,000 in our FE reserve, and we only have 137 in our capital works reserve. So in terms of our future expenditure, we're looking at adding 50,000 this year and then approximately 25,000-ish as we move forward. And then our capital works reserves, which we would have also for acquisition. This would capture acquisition as well as any future parkland development. We're looking at proposing contributions of 250,000 this year and then bumping that up into the $350,000 range in following years, so that we can get our acquisition budget, our capital works budget, up to a decent number. Again, this service, as Doug has alluded to, really hits on all of our key drivers. The big one here is being kind of working with our community groups and also working with Comox First Nation. And obviously this could have some huge benefits in terms of environmental protection in our region moving forward. So on that, I'm happy to take any further questions.
Thanks, Mark. Questions, anybody? You're 6. Nope. 10? No, 6. 6.
Thanks, Chair. So again, just going back to the point that I made earlier with regards to a jump of nearly 33% or just over 33% in tax requisitions to Comox Valley residents, most notably Area B, where we're looking at a bump of 32%. Just again, it's a huge bump. And again, the comment that I made with regards to need versus wants. And I guess I'd look at this particular instance when we're looking at economic tough times. A 33% bump is quite a bit in my opinion. And again, looking at some of these expenses such as advertising at $13,000 increase, maps and printing a $4,000 increase, and then a capital works reserve goes from $137,000 to $250,000. So I'm really struggling with a 33% increase here, and I'll just leave it at that for the time being. Thanks.
Thanks, Director, for sharing those concerns. Director Arbor, I think you're up next.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for the presentation from staff. I find myself agreeing with Dr. Hardy around the our escalation of reserves, trying to bring it up. That's the bulk of it. I would propose that we keep it the same. Looking at the strategic plan and the political dynamics of the valley, I think, the first acquisitions are likely to be close to municipal boundary, i.e. Stoughton. And that was one of the main drivers for the establishment of this service. I'm not seeing a lot of appetite based on other things for land that will be far away and for me, I think the context, as Dr. Hardy said, has changed quite a bit. And as it looks like we will have a successful AAP with the housing, there's going to be a bump there on our overall. And so I think we should keep our powder dry on the regional parks for now, still build some reserves, but maintain it at the same level. And my question to staff is, have we actually made a full-time, or are we planning, because 150,000 in staff for what is currently inexistent assets is really high. Like, I could see us spending 50 grand a year to scope out things and do some mapping exercises, but 150,000 when this service has 0 assets seems really high. So definitely I would see if there's support at the commission to keep the reserves accumulation at the same rate as we have this year until we have a clearer picture and we've onboarded new projects like the housing one. And second, the question as to what would be the consequence if we didn't put 150,000 towards staff, but more like brought it down by 100K. Thanks.
Do you want to respond to that staff question?
Yeah, sure.
Before
I
we move on.
can take a stab at that. Right now, we are in the process of hiring a new parks planner. So that position hasn't been filled. If this is the desire of the board, then we could look to not fill that position at this time, which would reduce those costs. If that was the case, then there would be potentially increase to consultant fees to help in the delivery of the land acquisition strategy.
Thanks. And maybe just to add to Mark's comments there, the 0.99 FTE that was showing on that HR slide, it is not one single position. It's a combination. There's several positions that are apportioned to this service. I believe those positions are parts of our general manager, parts of a branch assistant, parts of a couple of our parks planning and park staff, parts of Mark. So the apportionment of various positions make up that 0.99. But to Mark's point, we can certainly look to deliver the service through either other means or consulting services That being said, there is still, in the land acquisition work, there is still a substantive amount of work that's in front of us to proceed. I also wanted to just touch on, I think it's maybe where on the expenses slide, there's reference to the advertising. I think Director Hardy mentioned a couple of times, the $13,000 increase. It's actually a decrease. The minus sign is on the line above, so I can see maybe where that shows up. But the bulk of the requisition increase really here is that reserve contribution. So looking to set the Parks Committee up with the opportunity for acquisition in the future, I think was the intent here. So.
Thank you for that clarification. You're up, Director Cole Hamilton.
Thanks very much, Chair. I did have some questions along similar lines, and I realized that setting up a new service, definitely there's work to be done to lay the groundwork, but I am a little concerned about the combination of both consulting fees and personnel costs. Like last year, the combined total of the two of them was more than 300,000, and this year we're looking at 220,000. So that's almost $600,000 on establishing a service which currently doesn't have assets. So I'm really struggling with the administrative kind of weight that this has in this service. That it's meaning that only slightly more than half this year would go towards the actual reserve, and last year it was about 25% of the requisition went to reserve. So I appreciate that if we were cutting back staff, that might need to be made up with consultants. I'm just wondering what's the what's the most lean way that we can operate this service while it's establishing itself, so that significant portions of it aren't going to personnel and contract fees. And anyway, just wondering if there are any solutions beyond the idea of further contracts, because as far as I could see, there is just that one main piece on the work plan for this year, which is land acquisition strategy. So anyway, wondering what prospects there are for perhaps minimizing the overhead there.
Thanks. And thanks for that question. And can we clarify whether or not the land acquisition study is being done in-house, or is that the consultant fee and the staffing is separate from that?
At this stage, I'm still trying to figure out the best approach to that.
Okay.
We will need some consultants to help with our mapping and our GIS portions, bringing in all the information that we gathered through the strategic plan. And then we will need some help in terms of engagement. And then as we actually really dig deep into the land acquisition strategy, we're going to need some real estate consultant to help us manage that piece and the funding strategy piece. And then the staffing piece was basically to help manage that kind of moving forward. So there is a little bit of both needed to bring that moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Director McCullum.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I share similar concerns just around the ongoing costs of operating versus, how we're moving to build reserves. I certainly understand that starting up a new service, there's some costs associated with that. Certainly the strategic plan was comprehensive, and the land acquisition piece is completely important and vital for the long-term planning. But in my mind, we would see, some significant startup costs and then a diminishing of operational costs while we build up those reserves. Like, to me, in the medium term, the primary purpose of this service is building reserves so that we can acquire some land at some point. So yeah, the costs laid out both in this year, like a full-time staff plus another 80,000 in consulting fees. It seems like a lot of the overall requisition going into that piece. and likewise with last year for understandable reasons, but then to see that kind of proportionality carry forward into the 2027, 2028, 2029, without really a clear sense of why that can't just be reserves building up in a bank account. Yeah, I would rather see the emphasis put on trying to build that reserve. And, you know, I did look at how some other park services, and the ones I looked at, the land acquisition transfers to a different service after the acquisition's taken place. But those services seem to cost, you know, $30,000 to $50,000 a year. Although they're not planning to, you know, have land that they're responsible for at the end. So I realize it's not apples to apples, but even looking at the operational costs of some of the other recreation services, like the track and field services, is not to the degree that we have in this plan. So I would like us to maybe give some consideration on how we can do this in a more streamlined way, because I don't want to see the reserve requisition or the reserve contribution decrease. I think we heard loud and clear through the strategic planning process that the community is in support of putting money aside, and I wouldn't want to see that any less. It's going to be a pretty slow process as it is. Land's not getting any cheaper, but I don't want to overinvest in staffing resources and see land purchase take 2 or 3 times longer because, you know, we're kind of putting the emphasis on the wrong part of what we'd like to see happen. So I don't really have a question. It's more my comment.
Thanks, Director. I see Lucy's light on, so is that you?
Yeah, thank you,
Yep.
Chair. I just wanted to provide an additional piece of information for directors to consider. Just, we wanted to let you know that from a surplus perspective for 2024, where this is tracking is at about $157,000. Part of, there are some carry forward projects that are still going to come into 2025, but part of that savings, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, on this is the position that was there last year when that wasn't filled last year. So there's some savings from a position that was added last year that hasn't been filled yet. That's pretty clear. So there's those dollars that are there, and that will come in and help to build that reserve if that helps with your decision making today. And my only other maybe bit of concern when we speak of this position, that go in this 2025 planning, that it has been allocated out to some of the other services, and there's implications of that, and there may be some implications to other services if this position isn't going to be filled. So I'm not sure, Mark, if that's how potentially that can be addressed as we go forward, if the board would like that to be removed from the service for this year.
Okay, that's that new planning position you're referring to. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, who's next? I think Director Millier, you're up.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the presentation. And I also wanted to say thanks for coming to Comox Council about this. That was really helpful. And thanks to the room for the vote for vice chair also. Because I'm not here for the larger budget discussions, I actually just wanted to ask for staff's help in understanding what this means for the average household. So I see in the budget spreadsheet, it was 0.1480 per thousand of assessed value for 2024, and that's going up with the proposed budget to 0.1541. But would somebody be so kind as to say, like, is that $16 per household that we're talking about with this budget increase? And I just wanted to also echo Director McCollum's comments about the importance of the acquisition fund growing. And we've had a lot of conversation about this over the last couple of years, that the service doesn't mean anything until we actually have land. So I also just really want to support us in building up those funds for some purchases. Thanks.
Okay. I think it's Director Cole Hamilton.
And sorry,
Oh,
before,
oops, sorry.
I'm just wondering if, I see Kelly and Lucy are trying to find that answer for, Director Mayor on the,
Yeah.
the rate and the impact to the average home. Kelly Broughton will be able to answer that.
Sorry, I'll find it. It's not, oh, there it is. Oh, it's in the other spot. Sorry. Okay,
Thanks.
now you're good.
Thank you, through the chair. So the average, sorry, the cost per thousand of assessed value is 0.0184, which works out to be $1.84 per 100,000. And for a typical assessed value in Comox of 830,000, it works out to $15.25.
Thank you. And just to clarify, that's for the proposed budget. That wasn't for last year. Last year was maybe $1 or $2 different, right?
Last year, it would have been about the same, within about $2.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. It's helpful to know like what we're actually talking about tax-wise when we're talking about rolling this back. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Hardy, did
You
you?
want to go, maybe go with Cole because he hasn't asked a question yet and I have. Have you? Okay.
Are you number 6?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I recognize a desire to increase land acquisition funds and the reserve funds. And I realize that some folks last year at this time probably said, you know, it's not a big deal to increase the tax requisition and double it. But again, based upon where we are today and where we may be this time next year and the following year with regards to an economic crisis, you know, we need to start preparing ourselves for what's going to happen here down the road with regards to an economic crisis. So for us to turn around and like I said earlier, I really think we need to consider needs versus wants. And I know we all want to see, you know, a bigger reserve fund for land acquisition. But we also need to think about what's going on today with regards to going to the rock and trying to draw blood out of it. So I'd just be weary of those comments with regards to, while everybody said last year at this time, we don't mind spending double on tax requisitions for land acquisition for a regional park service. Thanks.
Thanks, Director. Go ahead, Director Cole Hamilton.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Director.
I got the mic.
Thanks, Chair, and I agree with Director Hardy's thoughts there. I guess my thinking is I'm kind of returning to a point that was made by Director Arbor previously about perhaps freezing the transfer to reserve, and I see that not only because of the economic circumstances we find ourselves in, but I think also until we have a land acquisition strategy, it's difficult for us to say definitively what we're putting this money aside for. It could well be that borrowing is a more effective means if a property comes up. Well, we're obviously gonna have to borrow a good chunk of it because we don't have much in our reserve, but so borrowing will always be a part of that. I'd like to understand better the role of cash in the bank versus borrowing in terms of our land acquisition strategy before we almost double the amount of money we're putting aside. And that's roughly the same logic as I think our discussion about Service 450. We wanted to understand more about how the money could be specifically put to work before increasing the requisition. So anyway, I would be, I guess there are no, we're not at the point of making a recommendation, but when we get to that point at the end of the discussion, I'd like to propose that we keep the transfer to reserve constant between 2024 and 2025, and also that staff look for ways of, wherever possible, of trimming the, I guess, the overhead costs with this service. Thanks.
Thanks, Director. And Director Arbor, do you not have a question anymore? I see no other lights here.
Yeah, no, thanks. What Director Cole Hamilton said, I think I'd welcome a motion along those lines. And I would say, yeah, and I would echo the comments since I now took the mic, but I totally get the what Director Mayer said around the proportion, but we spent the entire day yesterday doing that to all of our budgets, and if it was always like $2 here, this is a 33% increase. If we did 33% increase across the board, you know, we would get turfed out of office. And as I said, for Comox, we have that extra cost right now with the housing APs that are coming in that are adding pressure and definitely will bring their overall requisition up. So for me, I've the entire budget cycle, I've been looking for savings wherever possible. Thanks.
Okay, so okay. Director Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. So I'd moved that the proposed 25 to 2029 financial plan for the Service 625 Regional Parks and Trails Service be approved with the adjustment that the transfer to reserves be kept constant from 2024, and that staff report back with options on reducing the contract and personnel costs of the service.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you. Do we want to put it up on the, do we need to put it up on the screen? Do we know what we're talking about? Okay. Okay, so we have that, the proposed 2025 to 2029 financial plan for Service 625 Regional Parks and Trails be approved with an adjustment to keeping the transfer to reserves constant from 2024 through 2029, and that staff report back with, can you finish that? Options on reducing personnel and consulting fees. And was that your intent to keep it steady through the whole financial plan? We can revisit that next year. Okay, great. For 2025, yeah. Yes. 22. Go ahead.
I just want to just clarify whether the second part of the amendment and coming back with reducing the personnel costs, would you like that to come back before for February 25th, or is that okay if we come back with that after the budget's been adopted? Or if it's possible. Okay. So that will be something we'll return with on February 25th then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Director McCollum is 21, I think. Yes, she is. Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, in my mind, I don't know that I support keeping the transfer to reserves constant. I would like to see some type of increase to it, especially given that even with a 0% increase and a reduction to staffing, we could actually increase reserves if we went back and looked at the budget, because we heard from our CFO that we did have $150,000 surplus in this service last year. So I'm hesitant to provide the direction to keep them constant. I'd like to maybe see some options on a lower amount in conjunction with options on reducing personnel and consulting fees. So I'm not sure what my amendment would be, but I don't feel like I'm at the point where I want something as prescriptive as no increase to reserves, because in my mind, that's kind of the whole point of what we're doing here. So
Nice. I just wonder if I could ask a clarifying question to Lucy around timing. For February 25th, will we be able to speak more definitively to the surplus and to understand what the full picture there is for this, for this particular service? Because I think that might then help to provide those options that the committee is interested in, or at least Director McCollum's interested in looking at.
Yes, through the chair, as we continue through February, we get closer and closer to our final year end. So we'll be able to more solidify what the surplus figure is going to look like. And coming back with information around this service for you on the 25th, we can be refreshing that, show you the implications to the reserve balances as we're going forward. And if the board wishes to have different options on gradual increases to the reserves moving forward, we can also bring some options for that too.
Great, thanks, Lucy. Director Grieve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm of mind to agree that we have to keep putting money into reserves. I think, as far as promotion advertising, a lot of the stuff that we've done was basically to establish the service and to advertise the service. But what I hear around this table is we do want to build reserves, because that is, without that, we're kind of dead in the water if something does come up. And I would suggest that, these land acquisition opportunities come out of the blue sometimes. It's not something you can sit back and say, well, at point A or point B, we're going to buy this or whatever. When it comes available, that's when you have to act. So I'm just wondering if we have a proposed that was it 0.018 on the thou, so $1.84 on the 100 thou with the existing budget as it was written. What was it last year as a proportion on the tax? I mean, can we keep it at that rate and still be able to increase our reserves and just cut back on all the other stuff at this point? Because as far as moving towards a land acquisition policy, we know that's not a burning issue right now, right? But we do know that we got to keep socking it away every year, so that when we do have all our ducks in a row, and that obviously isn't going to be next year or this year, then we at least have a little bit in the kitty. At least we're building that reserve. So what are we looking at from last year compared to this year, and how much of a bump is this at $15 for an average house? Because that somebody once said that this board can swallow elephants whole but chokes on mice, and I see that happening here.
So I just want to say we are 15 minutes overdue for our next committee meeting. So if we cannot wrap this up, we will have to adjourn and come back. I'm going to go to do you want to try and respond?
Director Graven, through the chair, I don't know if I even caught all of your questions, but partly what I'm seeing in the resolution that's up there at the moment would be a bit of what you're speaking about. The services mostly about the professional fees and the staffing. There's not much else in there, and I do see in that resolution to be coming back and looking for ways that we can reduce op costs, and therefore more of the dollars that we are requisitioning already goes into reserves. So there's a piece of that in there. And then your other part of your question, and happy to fully bring that back on the 25th if we're running out of time here.
So I wonder if that would satisfy the commission if we made a friendly amendment to look at graduating reserves or a lower increase in reserves, and then reducing the personal consulting fees. Would that make everybody happy? Yeah, staff will come back with both those options. Okay, so is that, or do you want to move that? Okay. Director McCollum and yes.
For the resolution, I guess.
There you go.
I'd like to, again, provide some comments. And again, just going back to Director Hamilton's comments earlier with regards to I get and understand the desire to put some money into reserves for land acquisition. But again, based upon the economic times that we're in, does it make sense to start doubling what we're putting into it right now? And going back to Director Hamilton's comment with regards to, again, if the land acquisition opportunity comes up, there's nothing stopping the service from going and borrowing money to acquire a very important piece of property if it comes up and the opportunity's there. And again, just going back to, well, it's only $15 a household. And we've had these discussions over the last few weeks. Well, this particular service is only $15 or it's only $20 or it's only $30. But for Area B, we're looking at an average of 41 different services. So if we go, it's only $10 or $15 for this service, cumulatively you multiply that by 41. And that's just for the basic services that we're talking about. There's still about another 4 or 5 or 6 different services for constituents in Area B. So really we start getting up to about 47 or 48 services, where if we say it's only another $15, it starts to add up. So I just ask that people take that into consideration as well. And then with regards to, again, parks, and I know there's an importance, don't get me wrong, I get and understand the importance of parks. We have some fabulous parks in the Comox Valley. Seal Bay Park is a great one. But just going back, there's again, nothing stopping a municipal government if there's an opportunity for them to go out and pursue a piece of property and make a park. There's nothing stopping the municipality from going and making that acquisition as well for a park. So there's different avenues and different variables that we can take into consideration with regards to advancing more parks here in the Comox Valley, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thanks, Director, for sharing those thoughts. Go ahead, Director Moore.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I like the rewording of this to look at the lower increases and to come back with options. Yeah, I think it's important to note that, I mean, while I agree absolutely with Director Grieve, we want to, whoops, sorry, I'm doing that all day today. We want to be prepared when land comes up, but we also need that land acquisition strategy because I think part of the growing pains of this commission is that there are many different perspectives, and we've talked about this when we were doing the initial planning, that if we don't have a proper framework in place, then we'll be going around in circles in terms of trying to figure out, you know, what we decide to acquire and not. So I think that land acquisition strategy is hugely important, and maybe hopefully we can do it with a lower personnel cost, but I think they have to go hand in hand. So yeah, and I guess just in terms of, this is a regional committee that we all agreed upon, and there was rationale for doing a regional approach to parks. So again, yeah, we're all electoral areas and municipalities are all doing their own work around their local parks, but you know, we made a decision on creating this service. We had a ton of public support for it, so just wanted to remind folks of that. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And seeing no other mics on, I will call the question. All in favor of the resolution? 4, and any opposed? Oh, I didn't get you, Director Arbour.
I'm in favor, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Just Director Grieve opposed?
Yeah, I think I can live with it till I get before.
Okay, great.
I'm not hopeful.
And Director Millier, you are?
I'm okay to.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that carries. And now could we have a motion for termination quickly? Thank you so much.